Well, hi again, everyone. It's Rob Ryder on November 26, 2023, Sunday after Thanksgiving. And today, on duty, even when involuntarily absent. That's really what anybody who's ever joined the military is. I'm going to, let me clarify that. Let's talk about voluntary enlistees, and we'll see if we can fit everybody else in. As far as voluntary enlistees, right, we're involuntarily absent. Because Rutluski Robert Allen is a missing enlistee. Right? That's the name on my forms that they took with me to the MEPS station. But that isn't who left on the order to go to Fort Hood, Texas. Right? The guy that went to Fort Hood, Texas was Rutluski Robert A. Well, then what happened to Rutluski Robert Allen? Apparently he's missing. And he's the enlistee, right? He's the guy that has the contract with the Armed Forces of the United States. So, hey, I want my person back. So technically, I could be, as Rutluski Robert A., if that's what they want to say I am, because I have paperwork that says that, right? That I could say, well, I'm his next of kin, which turns out that next of kin is actually a legal term and has nothing to do with being a blood relative. They have a different name for that. Right? But next of kin is whoever next of kin is, depending on who got to decide who the next of kin was. And it's all legal. So there's something squeaky going on there. We got esquires involved in legal stuff. So anyways, it's all, it's a big pile of spaghetti. But as it turns out, if you look at a couple of different sections out of the United States Code, one would be Title 37, which has to do with pay and allowances for the armed forces, and Title 10, specifically, I think it's Chapter 76. Well, we're going to find out in just a second. We'll look at it. Having to do with missing persons, right? That your involuntarily absent enlistee is a missing person under the law, and therefore you're still being paid. So now if you could return and your absence was excused, well, then you could be paid and collect all your pay that has been put in an account the whole time you've been missing. Well, that's the idea. So let's see if we can get that done. Okay, Rutluski Robert Allen, the missing enlistee, is also known as Rob Ryder. And my email address is courtofrecord@aol.com. And you'll find me on YouTube at Rob Ryder, ROBBBRYDER. And this is, one of many, many videos trying to find a solution to a situation. And it's easy to find the evidence to say, well, we should be able to do this, but it's like impossible so far to get anybody to do anything. It's like we've been invaded or something, that we don't really have a true government. Ha ha ha. If you've watched my videos, you know that to be true. We don't have a constitutional government. Nobody's taken a proper oath of office. The only people who take a proper oath of office, according to the law, are people in the military. Right? We're taking the one that's on the piece of paper just the way it is, written for us to take on the law. And nobody else does that. Okay, let me pull a few things up here and we shall get started. Hang on. Yeah, now here's a little bit and piece I want to add to the mix that because it really affects everybody, although in this case we're talking about Barack Hussein Obama and his registering with the Selective Service System. I see here they call him President Barack H. Obama, but that isn't who, as we'll see, that did a Selective Service System registration. There is no Barack H. Obama. H isn't anybody's name. It's an initial. It's not part of a legal name. So it may be part of a legal fiction, but it's not part of your legal name. Anyways, what it said was, enclosed are copies of his registration form and the resultant automated file screen. Mr. Obama did indeed register with Selective Service and was assigned selected service number, blah, 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 on September 4th, 1980. The 1H, this is the important part now, the 1H status assigned to him at the time was not, strictly speaking, a classification. Selective Service has not classified registrants since the draft ended in the mid-70s. However, since that time, 1H has been assigned to everyone as a catch-all classification. It was not assigned to Mr. Obama as a result of any action on his part, and there is no related documentation. The formal description of 1H is registrant not currently subject to processing for induction or alternative service. Well, that's like, part of what it says, because we can go look and see what it exactly says. But before we do that, they did this to everybody. So they gave everybody who's gone to register in the selected service has gotten this classification of 1H. Not just Obama. He didn't do anything to get this. It was just given to him. It's just the way they do it. All right, it has not classified registrants since the draft ended in the mid-70s. Although the law says they're supposed to be, they haven't. They're just telling you the truth. We haven't done it since the 70s. However, since that time, 1H has been assigned to everyone as a catch-all classification. Right? To everyone. Everyone has a 1H. I wonder what that could mean. All right, hang on again. Just real quick, since I had them available, let's just take a look at these two. We'll finish up a little more. So everybody at one point, now I assume, because I didn't have to do this, I didn't have to fill a selected service system. I fall in this little window between 1958 and 1960 where, you didn't have to do this. But, you'd fill a form out like this, and it has your last name, first name, middle name. Permanent address, right? What does it say right there? Permanent address. So he puts down an address. Current phone number. That's down here. Okay, now this is current mailing address. Oh, that's what it is. Permanent address, he put same as above. So he didn't fill it in. Now, why would that be? Right, so he didn't give himself a permanent address. The reason I say this, when we go and look at how they put this into the computer, right, they gave him his number, and there's Obama, Barack Hussein. So they made his first name Barack Hussein. He had it Barack in the first box, Hussein in the second or the middle name box. They didn't care. They put it the first name, right? Because Barack Hussein is his first name, like Robert Allen is my first name. This is why you don't have a middle name. You can't have a middle initial. So we have these two-part names. That's the way that the law is looking at it. And they didn't put a permanent address for him, which I was always trying to figure out, why come? And they didn't put a telephone number, although he gave it. So it's like he doesn't really live anywhere. That's the point on this. Like, he may have had a current address someplace, but there's no permanent address. And without a phone number, well, if you can't get him at the current address, he must have disappeared. Can't find him. Missing. See how easy it is to make somebody go missing? Just don't give them a permanent address. Okay, and then in 32 CFR chapter, what would that be, 14 XVI, we have under subsection 16.1630.2, classes. Each registrant shall be classified in one of the classes prescribed in this part. Well, the very first one is Class 1A, available for unrestricted military service. All right, then you got a Class 1A-0, and it goes on. They got a Class 1C, and well, eventually we'll get down to one that's called a Class 1H. Right, but Class 1A are all registrants available for unrestricted military service shall be in Class 1A. So if you're not available for unrestricted service, you're going to be in a different one. And apparently that's what's going on because they put everybody in 1H. Because in Class 1H shall be placed any registrant who is not eligible for Class 1A and is not currently subject to processing for induction. So everybody they give a 1H to, they're saying is not eligible for Class 1A, that there's some kind of defect that's keeping you from serving in an unrestricted military service. And they just did it without, your consent. So, but they did it for a reason. This all fits together. It's like they want you to be missing. So let's go look at. This is just everybody who did selective service. Now, eventually, if you go and voluntary enlist and fill out the proper forms, well, next thing you know, you should be in the military. Let's go look at those for a minute. Okay, so from the beginning, right? This is really where the problem started. It started at the beginning. It really isn't the DD-214 that they gave you that's the problem, although it has errors on it. The real problem started with the very first piece of paper that you filled out to join the military. And then what they did with that once, you gave it to the military. Because on the DD Form 4, which is the contract you signed as an enlistee, it says name, and then in parentheses, it says last, first, middle, right? But, if things in parentheses aren't there, then it shouldn't be there. I could say, well, that's not my name. My name's Robert Allen Retluski. Put it that way. But, I didn't fill this out. It was filled out for me, obviously, and that's the way they did it. So, fine. Retluski Robert Allen is the enlistee using this serial number. And he enlisted at MEPS Detroit. And, he did his part. Got signed by the armed forces. They did their part. We have a contract. And then this contract, it says as long as I'm enlisted, right, I'm entitled to receive pay, allowances, and other benefits as provided by law and regulation. It also says in here, I don't know exactly where it is. I should have highlighted these before. That your enlistment can be extended indefinitely. In fact, now they have indefinite enlistments. They're doing it right now. Right? And so the criteria was that if you enlisted during a war or a war started while you were enlisted, your enlistment would continue until the war ended. Well, the Cold War is a war. It's been going on since 1946. It didn't end until 1991, but before it ended, another war started called the Persian Gulf War. And that war is still going on. And in between, we had the Korean War and the Vietnam War, which are really proxy wars of the Cold War. So, since World War II, we've been at war. Very simple. And because we're at war, you're on an indefinite enlistment. And so be it. As long as I'm enlisted, I'm entitled to pay allowances and other benefits as provided by law and regulation. Well, I ain't been paid. Right at age 60, I should have been able to retire. I get a retirement check. Every veteran. So this is why it's a big deal. Because somebody's claiming this money because, this is the enlistee. This is the person with the freaking contract. Where's he at? Because if he's missing, he's still getting paid. And it's going into an account, handled by Treasury, which is going to take it and invest it into savings bonds and so forth. It's all written into the law, right? Title 37. But it's in your name. I mean, this is so if the enlistee, Retluski Robert Allen, would appear, and they could say, well, your absence was, involuntary and due to a hostile action. Check the right boxes on a form, basically. You can be excused and you can collect your pay. So, all right, hang on. So, when you finally get around to signing block 21 on this Form 4, right, and then you got this other guy countersigning, well, here is the agreement. Confirmation of enlistment, where both parties are signing the contract. Now we have a bilateral contract that says I'm supposed to be paid, or Retluski Robert Allen's supposed to be paid. So, where is he? And the fact that I did it as Robert Allen Retluski, apparently that's my signature. I can sign my name any way I want to. And then, this down here is my mark. Well, it says signature enlistee, but I mean, look at Trump's signature, right? It looks like it's on an oscilloscope. There's no, that doesn't say Donald John Trump or anything close to it. It's just a bunch of scribbly lines. That's a mark. So when he put an X on here, right? That's a mark. It's like I couldn't sign for myself, and so then this guy signed for me. That's how they did it back in the day. Here, put your X here, and we'll sign your name next to it. So, but good enough for me. I got a contract. You have a contract. So this document is one of the 2 ascension documents that every enlistee has, and the other one is the DD Form 1966, which could have numerous pages. This particular style has 8 pages. I've seen them with 6 also. Right, but the 2 documents together, and some regulation I've read, are considered your ascension documents to show that you've ascended into or onto active duty. And the problem is these things have errors in them. So somewhere on yours, you're going to find a thing that says eligible for enlistment, eligible for enlistment, and they're not going to be checked. And these boxes aren't going to be filled out. And then, it's like it wasn't done. So no one ever decided if I was eligible or ineligible for enlistment. It's like I fucking disappeared. And then you get to the last page in this one. Statement of name for official military records. Right? For whatever reason, it all got NA'd and I didn't get to sign it. It's like I had nothing to do with that box. Although I did sign there, but we didn't finish this up, and, so it is. So there's all sorts of errors and omissions in our records, and the person that went to the MEP station isn't the person that left. And I can show you that here, where let me see, where am I? Oh, hang on. Yeah, right here, Rutluski, comma. It's either a comma or a piece of dirt. It may not have a comma there. That's the thing. It's, best copy they had, I really can't tell. But it's Robert A. with my social security number from MEPS, Detroit, Michigan, right, going to Fort Hood, Texas. Well, what happened to the enlistee? He never left MEPS. This guy left MEPS, right? The legal fiction left MEPS. Well, just a couple other bits and pieces while we're doing these, because it's good to know this stuff, right? So in Army Regulation 635-8, at what page? Page 16. Yeah. It says, we'll get there eventually. Right, this has to do with preparing separation documents. It says that the DD Form 214 is not intended to have any legal effect on termination of a soldier's service. All right, so because somebody gets a DD 214 says discharge, it has nothing to do with you being discharged from the service. Or you may have been discharged from active duty, because that's what the form is for, but it doesn't say that you're discharged from the service. What would tell you if you've been discharged from the service is an order, right? You'd have a separation order separating you from military service, from the custody and control of your branch of service. And nobody gets one of those. So, again, we're still in the military. And then in Army Regulation 635-10, which is processing personnel for separation, page 11 of the document, it says administrative procedure for personnel stationed in CONUS, right? DD Form 2A, reserve, read, each soldier being released from active duty who still has a remaining service obligation will be required to complete a DA Form 428, Application for Identification Card. Under AR 640-3, paragraph 26, or 2-6, DD Form 2A, Armed Forces of the United States Identification Card Reserve Red will be prepared during pre-transition processing by the Servicing ID Card issuing facility. Soldier will be advised that the DD Form 2A must be in their personal custody at all times during their remaining service obligation. So, in other words, it's saying you get a reserve card whether you sign up for the reserves or not. If you have obligation left, which, I believe it's 6 years for selective service obligation. You serve 3 on active duty, you come off, you got 3 years left, they're supposed to give you an ID card. But I don't know anybody who ever got an ID card for that. The only people I know who got an ID card actually, joined the reserves or the National Guard. So, because we don't have this, it's like, well, we never really, truly all processed. And so you never left. This is what you would do to leave active duty. Well, you haven't left active duty if this hasn't happened. You were supposed to be going to do this, and now you're missing. Right? The enlistee is missing somewhere. So it's, a little bit here, a little bit there. Pretty soon you got a mountain of evidence. It's like, well, how are you ever going to get somebody to do something with this? Which is what I'm really interested in. I'm tired of researching it. It's like, well, how do I get somebody to agree on the other side of the fence? Well, that's where this came in, right? Eventually, I came across Title 37 of the United States Code. I've never actually sat down and said, well, what are all the different titles in the United States Code? I really couldn't tell you. I know the ones I know because I go look at them, but I don't really know what all the different ones are. So, boom, found out, hey, they got Title 37, paying allowances for uniformed services. Well, that could be of interest to somebody like me. And then you see right away, well, they have payments to missing persons and payments to mentally incompetent persons. And assignments of pay, and you got miscellaneous rights and benefits and some kind of administration. So, how do you get yourself classified as missing so you can get paid? That was part of why I went into this. So what this led then was to this other section here, which has to do with, in Title 10, right? Chapter 76 has to do with missing persons. System for accounting for missing persons. And this section of Title 10 and AR 600-8-6 has to do with personal accounting and strength reporting, which says in this regulation that there has to be 100% personnel accounting. Right? There's no deviation. It has to be 100%. Right? By name accounting. So, how come it's not happening? Well, that was the difference. Having found those things out, it's like, okay, well, I know all these things. Now, what do you do with them? Well, this kind of says what to do because it gives this story about how they created this accounting system for missing persons. And that it's, there'd be a guy called the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Prisoner of War, Missing Personnel Affairs, to have a responsibility to Department of Defense matters relating to blah, 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 and the official that is designated will be known, also serve as the Director, Defense Prisoner of War, Missing Person Office, and that the designated official shall establish policies which shall apply uniformly throughout the Department of Defense for personnel recovery, including search, rescue, escape, evasion, and for personal accounting, including locating, recovering, and identifying missing persons or their remains after hostilities have ceased. And so forth and so on. So, right, this activity shall be known as the Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office. So, where's that at? Right, let's go look for that thing. So, you grab it real quick and you say copy the text. And you drop in your favorite search engine, and you can look at Wikipedia. Hey, Defense, Prisoner of War, Missing Personnel Office. Same thing. Yep, yeah, using all the same words. You got the same hyphen, or not hyphen, bar. Okay, so let's open it up and see what it says. And I always hate that because it says was, which means, well, it is no more, right? So what happened to the Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office, the DPMO? Well, apparently they got moved over to something else, to the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. Okay. And this is, so it's still in action. It is an agency. Well, and sure enough, so you look long enough and you can find the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. There is such a thing. And, here's all the different laws that apply to it. And by gosh, we got Title 10 we're talking about, and Title 37. So, it looks like they've carried it over, and now whatever they would have been doing under the one written in the law is now being done under this one, which has a different name, but it has the same functions as the one that had been there before and functions to someplace else. That's how they do it. Keep moving stuff around. Right? Uniform DoD procedure. The Secretary of Defense shall prescribe procedures to apply uniformly throughout the Department of Defense for the determination of the status of persons described in subsection C and for the systematic, comprehensive, timely collection, analysis, review of other such information relating to such persons. Outstanding. Well, who's covered? Section 1502 of this title applies in the case of any member of the armed forces on active duty who becomes involuntarily absent as a result of a hostile action or under circumstances suggesting that the involuntary absence is a result of a hostile action, whose status is undetermined or who is unaccounted for. Well, where is Rutluski Robert Allen? He's unaccounted for. Right? And because it happened during wartime, it can be hostile. Why? What other reason would, a member of the military be missing? Except because of hostile action. So, okay, well, that sounded good. Let's keep going. Then it applies to other people through the DoD, civilians even, and get your primary next of kin. An individual is a primary next of kin of any person described in subsection C may, for the purpose of this chapter, designate another individual to act on behalf of the individual as primary next of kin. And as we'll see, we'll read later, we'll find, primary next of kin or next of kin, that's a legal term. Right? And it doesn't have to be a person. That could be somebody who's appointed by somebody else to be the next of kin. Termination of applicability of procedure when missing person is accounted for, which is what this is all about. We want to be accounted for. We don't necessarily want to go through the whole procedure. We just want to be accounted for. So they can terminate the process, which is in this chapter we're looking at, if they would just say, well, hey, you're back. Let's settle up. Right? But the provisions of this chapter relating to boards of inquiry and to the actions of the secretary concerned on the reports of those boards shall cease to apply in the case of missing persons upon the person becoming accounted for or otherwise being determined to be in a status other than missing. So in this AR 600-8-6, it shows all these different duty status codes that you can have that you're still on duty, but now within being on duty, what's your code, right? And you got administrative absence, absent without leave, absent without leave again, captured, confined, convalescent, confined in the hands of military authorities, hospitalized, interned, missing in action, and then just plain missing. soldier whose whereabouts and status are unknown, provided the absence appears to be involuntary. The type of casualty code can either be hostile or non-hostile, only authorized to use. CMAOD, only authorized to use. So if they can't account for you, well, you're missing. And if you're missing, well, now you have an on-duty status, and they can't just arbitrarily say you're dead. They just have to say you're missing and keep paying you. It's going into an account. Okay, so just find the right person to agree, and voila, man, you're in. And it would seem to be then, well, who do you need to get to agree with you? It's this. It's these people here. The Defense POW MAA Accounting Agency has to agree that you're accounted for. Okay, and this got a whole bunch of read between the lines, like they've amended this thing gosh knows how many different times. So at one time, covered person said this. Section 1502 of this title applies in the case of any member of the armed forces on active duty who becomes involuntarily absent as a result of a hostile action, or under circumstances suggesting that the involuntary absence is a result of hostile action, and whose status is undetermined or who is unaccounted for. Pretty simple. Just claim to be, and now they have to prove you're not. Until they can account for Ritluski Robert Allen, they just have to assume he's, in the hands of the enemy. So, 1502 was all leading up to this. Missing person initial report. Preliminary assessment and recommendation by commanders. By commander, not us, commander. After receiving information that the whereabouts and status of a person described in Section 1501C of this title is uncertain, and that the absence of the person may be involuntary, the commander of the unit, facility, or area to or in which the person is assigned shall make a preliminary assessment of the circumstances. If, as a result of the assessment, the commander concludes that the person is missing, the commander shall recommend that the person be placed in a missing status. And, not later than 10 days after receiving such information, transmit a report containing that recommendation to the secretary concerned in accordance with procedures prescribed under Section 1501B. So, what we need is this right here. We need to get a preliminary assessment. Have somebody say, hey, it appears this person's missing, and get it to this dude that's playing the commander, right? The commander of the unit, facility, or area. And, they're using lowercase c commander. So now it's like, well, what can that mean exactly? Well, one of the things I found out as I was doing this is I said, well, who might I be able to use? And it's like I started looking at JAG officers or military law through the Bar Association. And but came across the fact that there are circuit judges that are still JAG officers. Right? And one of them here is a lieutenant colonel. Well, lieutenant colonels have the same grade as a commander in the Navy. Right? It's a commander rank, so it's like a lower C commander. So a lieutenant colonel could do this. So that's what I have, to get to the end of what I've done. So I've sent something to this lieutenant colonel who's also a, circuit court judge. And we'll take a look at it before we're done, but, see if he'll help. Will he be the one to do this for me? Right? A man learned in the law who's also a military officer, right, to do this so that an enlistee can, be accounted for. He really has a duty to do it. He's an officer, for God's sakes. If this enlistee is not accounted for, he has a duty to help him get accounted. Okay. Let's see. Then you got to do some other things. Got to safeguard action of the secretary concerned upon receiving the recommendation that a person placed in a missing status. The secretary receiving the recommendation shall review the recommendation and not later than 10 days after receiving such recommendation shall appoint a board under this section to conduct an inquiry into the whereabouts and status of the person. Inquiries involving more than one missing person. So then now this may be something that affects more than one person, which obviously it does if we're talking MEP stations and we all have the same problem where we all went to MEPs of one name and left with another. Well, apparently it's it's at least an enlistee-wide problem. And then who's on the board? Okay, so it's all fine. Individual referred to a military officer. So basically for me, a military officer with some knowledge about how a MEP station works, if that's where it's determined I was from or last place I was seen or whatever the hell it is. How they got to, so they're going to appoint a board. And the board could have just one person. Then the board's going to do their thing. And part of that is counsel for missing person. The secretary appointed a board to conduct an inquiry under this section shall appoint counsel to represent each person covered by the inquiry, or in a case covered by Section B, one counsel to represent all persons covered by the inquiry. Right, counsel appointed under this paragraph may be referred to as missing persons counsel and represents the interest of the person covered by the inquiry. Outstanding. Ritluski Robert Allen has will have counsel appointed. And not any member of the person's family or other interested party. So it's only for the person of interest. Nobody else. The identity of the counsel appointed under this paragraph for a missing person shall be made known to the missing person's primary next of kin. That's why, okay, well, then make me primary next of kin as Ritluski Robert A. We need to. Or Robert Allen Ritluski. All right, I'm the primary next of kin of Ritluski Robert Allen. To be appointed as missing person counsel, they must have certain qualifications. Basically, got to be a JAG officer. Missing persons counsel shall assist the board in ensuring all appropriate information concerning the case is collected, logged. Right, so they're supposed to do a really squeaky clean deal with this counsel acting on your behalf, which is completely different than when you go to court and, that isn't what's happening. You have nobody working on your behalf. Then determination by the secretary, and then we go on. And, like I said, none of this really has to happen, or it only has to happen until they get to the point where they say, well, yeah, you're accounted for. We see you. Personnel files, program to resolve pre-enacting missing person cases. The secretary shall implement a comprehensive, coordinated, integrated, and fully resourced program to account for persons described in subparagraphs A, B of 1513, which I think is below. Yeah, we're at 1509 now. Of this title, who are unaccounted for the following from the following conflicts. Right, the Cold War. Now, the VA will tell you the Cold War is not a war. Yet the Title 10 says, well, it's a war. It's in here. It's a conflict. Right, where we had to keep track of people. And then there's the Persian Gulf War. And such other conflicts. Well, they say this one ended in 1991. That's interesting. They said it ends in 1991 because the VA says it's still ongoing. Okay, so let's go down here then and see the purpose of POWMA accounting, community, means all these different offices. Treatment as missing person, each unaccounted person covered by subsection A shall be considered to be a missing person for purposes of applicability of other provisions of this chapter to the person. And if you're considered a missing person, well, they're going to pay you. It applies to the Coast Guard, return a live person. Okay, return alive a person declared missing or dead. Any person, except for a person subsequently determined to have been absent without leave, or a deserter, in a missing status or declared dead under subsection 7 of Chapter 55 of Title 5 or Chapter 10 of Title 37, or by a board appointed under this chapter, who is found alive and returned to the control of the United States, shall be paid for the full time of the absence of the person while given that status or declared dead under the law and regulations relating to pay and allowances for persons or of persons returning from a missing status. Shit. Get declared missing and then be found. So this is saying we could already have, that may be what happened to Lusky Robert Allen. He's been declared dead. Right? Then got to rebut the presumption. Say, no. That was Lusky Robert A., the guy that left. Right? He is Lusky Robert Allen. They have the same Social Security number. See? Right? Because they should be doing everything by name, but now they're doing it by Social Security number. But everything, according to the regulation for personnel accountability, is by name accountability. Such terms include an unaccounted person described in subsection A of 1509. The term missing status. What is that? Okay, missing person means, right? These people. A member of the armed forces on active duty is missing status or a civilian. Such term includes unaccounted for persons described in subsection A of 1509. That makes you a missing person with a missing status. And what's missing status mean? The status of a missing person who is determined to be absent in a category of any of the following: missing in action, interned, captured, beleaguered, besieged, detained by a foreign power or country. Well, I'm being beleaguered and besieged by the United States of America, the administrative state. I've been captured by the administrative state. Right? They're the hostile actor. The term accounted for with respect to a person in a missing status means that the person's returned to United States control alive, right? To United States control. Not United States of America. United States. Outstanding. How do we get that to happen? The term primary next of kin in case of missing person means the individual authorized to direct disposition of the remains of the person under section 1482 of this title. Well, that's interesting, which is different than the term member of immediate family is the case of missing person means spouse of the person, natural child, but it doesn't mean next of kin. That's the end of that, right? So, how is that all going to apply over here? Let's just take a quick look. Let me pull this up here. Okay, real quick in Title 37, which is the pay and allowances of the Uniformed Services, right? Title 37 of the United States Code. Subsection 205, computation service credible, subject to subsection B and C. For the purpose of computing the basic pay of a member of Uniformed Services, his years of service are computed by adding all periods of active service. See, it didn't say active duty, it said active service. There's two different things. All periods of active service as an officer, blah, 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 or enlisted member of a uniformed service. Right? So if you're an enlisted member, you're entitled to pay. And, and then all periods of active service, all periods during which he is enlisted or held the appointment of an officer, regular component, right? All periods during which he was enlisted or held an appointment as an officer, Army field clerk, blah, 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 of regular component, uniformed service, regular Army Reserve, organized militia, National Guard, Reserve component, Navy militia, right? So if you were a member of these, you were entitled to, you know, that's your service. It's all creditable service. Okay, and we're just going to quickly go through Chapter 10 because this is about payments to missing persons, which is what the idea is. If we're missing, we're getting paid. And the term missing status means, right, missing in action, intern, a foreign country, captured, beleaguered, besieged, detailed. It's a lot like we read in Chapter 10, just written differently. Okay, paying allowances continue while missing status. A member of uniformed service who is on active duty and performing inactive duty training and who is in a missing status is, for the period he is in that status, entitled to receive or have credited to his account the same pay allowances to which he's entitled to begin the period and may thereafter become entitled to. Okay, however, a member who is performing full-time training duty or other full-time duty without pay or inactive duty training with or without pay is entitled to the pay and allowances to which he would have been entitled if he had been on active duty with pay. So, by the fact that you're just a reserve, if you're missing and it's, looks like it has something to do with hostile action, then you'll start to get paid. Notwithstanding Section 1523 of Title 10 or any other provision of law, the promotion of a member while he is on missing status is fully effective for all purposes. Could be a general by now. Who knows? The expiration of the member's term of service while he is in the missing status does not end his entitlement to pay and allowances under subsection A. Entitlement to pay and allowances under subsection A ends on the date the secretary concerned receives evidence that the member is dead or that his death is prescribed or determined under Section 555 of this title or under Chapter 76 of Title 10. Or you got to return. A member is not entitled to pay or allowances under subsection A for a period during which he is officially determined to be absent from his post of duty without authority, right? So unauthorized absence, or he is indebted to the United States for payments for amounts credited to his or her account for that period. So any period that they would say, well, you were AWOL, they're not going to pay you for that. But if, you're not AWOL, then you get paid for all of it. A member who is performing full-time training or inactive duty training is entitled to the benefits of this section only when he is officially determined to be in a missing status that results from the performance of duties prescribed by the component authority. This is why we got to go tell them. Right? I don't know. Am I in a full-time training duty or inactive duty training? Which one am I? Right? Because you're only entitled to them when they officially say that you're missing status. So that apparently that may not have happened yet. A member in a missing status who is continued in that status under subsection 555 of this title is entitled to be credited with pay and allowances under subsection A. Well, outstanding. Notwithstanding the end of the period of which it is made an allotment, including one for the purchase of United States savings bonds made by a member of uniformed services for his missing status may be continued. We'll find out whether they can just continue it anyways. Yeah, when the secretary concerned officially reports that a member in a missing status is alive, the payments of allotments authorized by subsections A through D may, subject to some other subsection of this title, be made until the date on which, in case covered under 555 of this title, the secretary concerned receives evidence. Or in the case covered under Chapter 76, Title 10, the secretary concerned determines, pursuant to the chapter, that the member is dead or has returned to control jurisdiction of the department concerned. So they have a thing in this AR 608-6. They talk about return to military control. That's what we need. We need to be returned to military control so that all the actions that need to happen can happen. They can only happen when you're in control of the military, back on duty, and then they can finish up the paperwork. For instance, you have to be on active duty to retire. Right? So you have to be on the military's control, on active duty. Then they can retire you, give you an order. Well, then you would be retired. All right, just about done here. But how about settlement of accounts? Secretary concerned or his designee may settle an account, a member of the Uniformed Services, for whose account payments have been made under these sections, and a survivor of a casualty to a ship, station, or military installation, which results in loss, destruction, and dispersing records. Well, I'm more interested in number one, I guess. That settlement is conclusive on the accounting officers of the United States in settling the accounts of dispersing officers. So, if you get the secretary to say, hey, it's a deal, then the people that write the checks will write the checks. And how about this? Benefits for members held as captives. So this is interesting. In this section, the term captive status means a missing status of a member of uniformed services which, as determined by the President, arises because of hostile action and as a result of membership in the uniformed services, but does not include a period of captivity of a member as a prisoner of war if Congress provides to such member in an act enacted under. So prisoners of war have their own, right? They're MIAs, I guess. Oh no, they're POWs, but the captive status doesn't include them. It includes other people for these reasons. Secretary of Treasury shall establish a savings fund to which the secretary concerned may allot all or any portion of the pay or allowances of any member of uniformed service who is in a captive status, to the extent that such pay and allowances are not subject to an allotment under subsection 553 of this title or any other provision of law. Amount so allotted shall bear interest at a rate which, for any calendar quarter, shall be equal to the average rate paid on United States Treasury bills with 3-month maturities issued during the preceding calendar quarter. Such investment shall be computed quarterly. Amounts in the savings fund certified to a member shall be considered as pay and allowances for the purpose of 553A. So this account is yours whenever you return. And they've, been investing it in average rate paid on the United States Treasury bills. It didn't say that they're actually doing Treasury bills, but anyways, so I went and looked at what these 3-month Treasury bills were averaging or whatever, in the, like 5%, 4% in that area there. Probably never get about 6%, but I don't know that. I'm just saying that 4 or 5% is what they were doing now. Right? Compounded quarterly, it sounded like, and and it could be paid as you're paid. So that's where we are. I guess I'm done with this part. Payment, got mentally incompetent persons, all sorts of things. Alrighty, so, this Defense POW MIA accounting agency, according to Title 10, read between the lines, right, is supposed to be responsible for accounting for missing persons. And they have on here, right, are missing, and they go through past conflicts and, but you don't see the Cold War mentioned, but, oh, there it is. Well, by gosh, the Cold War is on there. Outstanding. And then unknowns, and then searchable list of the missing. Right? But what they don't have is searchable of the unaccounted for. That's my point. If we were For somebody like me, I've not been accounted for yet. When I'm accounted for, I'll be accounted as missing, and then I'd be on the list. And once I'm missing, well, then this machine can start doing its thing to get a board of inquiry and appoint counsel and so forth and so on, and all that can go on until I'm accounted for. So, it could end immediately if they just account for me. I wouldn't have to do all that. Well, we're going to find out. So, I wanted to find out myself. So I said, well, I could try to write something to these guys, but maybe I get somebody else to do it for me that's, a JAG officer or somebody whose specialty is military law. And like I said, as I was looking around, I found out, well, there's a Lieutenant Colonel. Lieutenant Colonel West is a circuit court judge in the 17th Circuit Court here in Kent County. So I'm going to write to him. Right, so Lieutenant Colonel West, thank you for your service to the United States. Sir, I, Robert Allen Wetluski, soldier, executed and subscribed the Oath of Enlistment incorporated in the DD Form 4 Enlistment Reenlistment Document, Armed Forces of the United States, committing enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen, Social Security number, to voluntary enlistment in the Armed Forces of the United States. Be advised that on February 2nd, 1982, actually it was 1983, I made a mistake, enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen entered the place of enlistment identified in the DD Form 4. Right? Go look on those forms. It says what the place of enlistment is. Well, it's MEPS Detroit, MI. But there is no record of a military order being issued to prove enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen was ordered to leave MEPS Detroit, MI. As a result, it must be presumed that enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen is to this day involuntarily absent, and due to apparent hostile action remains unaccounted for. This unresolved involuntary absence of enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen is adversely affecting my ability to collect on the Armed Forces of the United States contractual obligations incorporated in the DD Form 4/1, such as pay, allowances, and other benefits as provided by law and regulation. It says so right on the form. That I am entitled to by enlistment of Wetluski Robert Allen in the Armed Forces of the United States. Either intentionally or mistakenly, my property is to this day wrongfully taken, and I am denied military due process to recover under Article 139 of the UCMJ, which is how I should be able to get this back, is go file for an Article 139 hearing to say, hey, that's my pay, give it back to me. But they won't recognize me as being in the military, so I can't use the UCMJ. Lieutenant Colonel West, Chapter 76, Title 10, United States Code on Missing Persons provides for Secretary of Defense to prescribe procedures, that'd be in 10 U.S.C. 1501B, to be used for the determination of status of enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen, which seems to require an initial report as described in 10 U.S.C. 1502 to initiate the process. But I'm not an expert. Sir, it is my belief that a commissioned officer learned of the law, acting under military justice and golden rule doctrine, would be doing every enlistee, primary next of kin, and United States a tremendous service if said military officer, judge advocate, set the precedence and provided the proper commander information that the whereabouts of enlistee Wetluski Robert Allen, with that Social Security number, is uncertain, and that the absence may be involuntary. This will result in enlistee being accounted for and the Secretary of Defense's prescribed procedures properly executed. Soon after, I would possess a DD Form 2 retirement military ID, have all accounts settled, receive my retirement pay, and spend my time ensuring the administrative state honors this duty to the gold fringe flag jurisdiction it serves. Thank you for your time. I wait for your affirmative reply and request for more information. Yeah, so hey, I emailed that to his law clerk. found the information online on the website, sent it to them. But veterans. There's plenty of people. There's plenty of veterans that are attorneys, and we're not asking them to do this in the black robe priest jurisdiction. We're asking them to do it in the military jurisdiction. And so, like I showed in my last video, you can find attorney firms that say that they can represent you in a court martial. Well, that's UCMJ. So if they can do that, well, then can you get my ass back in the military? Right? Because I need to be reported missing so I can collect my pay. And so we'll see what the lieutenant colonel does. Right? He's a commander, LTC. That's commander, lower C commander rank. So we'll see if I can get him to put his military hat on and do something for the United States. Return a missing enlistee back to the United States where I should be. Well, very good. That's where we are today. And we'll see what happens, because I'm on duty, even when I'm involuntarily absent. And so is every other enlistee. We're all missing. We should all be paid. We should all get our ID cards. If you're old enough, you should start getting your retirement pay. Da 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 da. Check, 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 check. And once you have your ID card, when you see shit happening in places with gold fringe flags, like the county building, you can take their ass to Uniform Code of Military Justice jurisdiction, because they're subservient to the UCMJ because they got a gold fringe flag. Right? So when they try to charge you property tax for the description and name, and your name different on the tax form than it is on the deed, you can say, well, I don't claim to own that shit, so I'm not paying no tax on it. It's not what's it's not what's on the deed. So either somebody lied to me about what I bought, or you're lying to me about what I pay in tax on. All I know is it's all happening here in this room with a gold fringe flag, so let's go talk to the JAG and see what they can do about it. So very good. Okay, we'll leave it there, and we'll see what happens next. You all have a great day. See ya.